All right, welcome to Fish Talk. I'm Forrest from Steel City Fishing. Today we're here with Matt. Let's get started. So, where are you from?
I live in Pittsburgh now, Forrest. I moved here about 8.5 years ago, but I am a Pennsylvania native. I came from the other side of the state. I just fell in love with the city and moved out here.
Absolutely. What got you into fishing?
I got into fishing when I was very young. It was something my grandfather and I liked to do together. And it was great because I was too young to go hunting with him. So him and I would go trout fishing together every weekend. We were mostly chasing streams and wading. He was an excellent fisherman, really good with flies.
Definitely attest to that. I fly fish for about 2 years in my life. I would go out and I would fish for about 8 hours and still not understand the process of the indications, and the amount of finesse that is in that type of fishing is insane. I would see my indicators and they would very lightly hit and go up and down and just continue floating until just recently. I had an avid fly fisherman on the stream tell me those little indications were trout. And since then, I've gotten a little bit better at fly fishing for trout, but gotta attest to his granddad. If he knew what he was doing and he knew how to fish for trout, gotta be a good fisherman right there.
Oh, he beat me every single time we went out.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. So what is your favorite species?
My favorite species is going to be the muskellunge. I think they are just a fascinating fish. They're so hard to catch. I love the just absolutely predatory nature, how hard they hit baits when you can get them to hit. I've been chasing them for years, mostly unsuccessfully.
Absolutely. I could definitely attest to that. There's a couple people in downtown Pittsburgh that I know definitely do fish for walleye and up the locks, down the locks, up the Ohio, Allegheny, and Monongahela fishing for muskie. And they catch some monsters. A couple guys are through in the middle of the state that do catch a bunch. But they are so difficult to catch. Their nickname is the fish of 10,000 casts. They are very, very, very aware of their surroundings, and they'll understand if a bait is not natural. And just to catch one is a feat in itself. To all those muskie fishermen out there, great job. What you guys do is impeccable. I could honestly never do it. I'm going to start trying to get into it and start trying to catch some muskie. But very hard fish to catch. Very hard presentation. And I love it. All right, let's get to the next. What is your PB?
My personal best so far is a 10-pound flathead. I caught it. It was my second flathead ever. I just started chasing them this year, and I think they are so much fun to catch. They're strong, they're tough fish, and they're not as easy to catch as a lot of other catfish. They're picky.
Absolutely. As a predatory species, a lot of people think catfish are all bottom feeders. Flathead, as a predatory species, feed upwards in the water column versus on the bottom. What they do is they have eyes on top of their head, so they have to look up. So when we present our baits, we usually have it anywhere from a foot to 1.5 feet off the bottom, presenting our cut bait or fresh live bait that we caught from the same river system or other local ecosystems to present an actual bait for them. These fish, I can attest, are one of the hardest fighters that we have in our river compared to carp and muskie. These fish don't have a lot of teeth, but they can get upwards of 40 to 50 pounds, and they can take a toll on your fishing tackle. I, this year, caught my first 27-pounder, almost a 30, trying to get a little bit more. And that fish took me 15 minutes to bring in on this rod right here. And this rod, I could catch sharks on if I wanted to. So when it comes down to it, these fish are extremely strong, amazing fish for our ecosystem. Pittsburgh's known for them. And we actually just released their cousin, the blue catfish, into our rivers. And we're just started seeing a little bit of a bloom of them. Matt here, I think, actually caught 1 or 2 of them this year.
I did, yeah. I caught 2 blues. I was completely shocked. I was really happy to see them, though. They both went right back in the water. I hope to see them about 50 pounds later. But I'm hoping that with a lot of what they've done to the river recently, they dredged up a lot of garbage. They've been stocking the blue cats. I've been seeing a lot more bait fish when I'm down there. So
Absolutely.
I think we're on the way to seeing a really nice recovery in the Three Rivers area.
Yeah, I'm loving that. Especially with what he was saying was the bait fish coming back. I just started seeing redfin suckers and shad in very large quantities coming back to our rivers that I haven't seen in past years. which is very good. So let's move on to this. It's a little section I call on this little video broadcast called the bait breakdown. So we're going to go by season and figure out what Matt here uses for different species per the inclement weather and the season changes. So what baits do you use for early spring? For bass, catfish, and any other species you fish for?
All right. Well, I will start with catfish because they are the ones that I mostly use actual bait for rather than lures. My golden bait is raw shrimp. I can use that during any season of the year and get hits. I have hit mostly channel cats off it. I did get both my blues on that, and I did get one of my 2 flatheads on it. So a lot of things like to eat it, but I also get hits from, I've hit smallmouth bass, I hit a gar on it once, I've actually hit a buffalo on it. Shrimp just seems to be that one magic bait that everything wants to eat. I notice early season, I also do really well with smaller baits, sometimes worms and stuff, but even just smaller cut bait. Forrest mentioned those redfin suckers. They are some of the best bait I've ever seen. I caught one that was decently sized and he was bait for about a week. A lot of meat on him. Those do really well for the spring. When I'm fishing for bass in the spring, I'm usually focusing a lot on soft plastics and also things that make a lot of noise. So those are going to be your spinner baits, your big rattly crankbaits like shad wraps and things. I don't make the bait size very big. I feel like they're kind of just waking up and getting some energy, but you want something that's going to attract a lot of attention in the water, and they're usually going to crush it right when it comes by.
So you brought up soft plastic. So what kind of soft plastic are you talking about? Senkos, Ned rigs?
Well, no, I'm pretty classic with soft plastics. I usually stick with a plain old Carolina rig, and I like to either use dark colored worms that are either in the purple or black spectrum in the 4 to 6 inch range. And the other thing I have really good luck with soft plastics is plastic crawfish. And for those, absolutely. I usually stick a little bit smaller, but something about the way those claws just wave as you bounce it off the bottom and everything grabs hold.
Yeah, absolutely. So we're going into, from spring, we're going into summer.
Summer gets tough in the Three Rivers because it gets so hot.
Absolutely.
This year, I believe our river was down almost 40 inches.
And I think the water temperature was up to 72?
It was pretty warm. It was getting to the point where you stuck your hand in and it felt like bath water.
Yeah.
Because of that, I noticed that I was getting better hits off of cut baits. I was getting better hits off of my bottom rigs, and I had to really chase around structure. The fish were not at all interested in shallow areas. The water was just too hot. So even places that were really good for me in the spring, like weed beds and shallows that have a lot of rocky areas, were just not producing. I had to chase things like holes. I had to chase bridge structure, was great because that shade cools the water down. And that was when I was noticing a lot better action towards the end of the afternoon and night. In spring and in winter, I usually notice right around dawn is when I get my best action, early morning fishing, but when the water is hot, stay cool.
Yeah, absolutely. I can attest to that. Early summers, in the summers especially, as a carp fisherman, I fish more and less margins, deep stretches, and right off of plateaus. But in the nighttime, I fish extremely shallow, especially in the downtown area. I will drop my rigs directly down on the wall and not cast at all. With this summer, with how hot it got, all these carp in the summer usually come up and they ride the wall. They were actually on the surface of the water trying to get colder air. With how hot the water was, the oxygen depletes and everything just doesn't really come into place that you need it to be. And it becomes a little bit more difficult fishing. So for a lot of people I've heard this year had a very bad year with fishing in downtown Pittsburgh.
It's everyone I talked to as well.
Exactly. And you really need to understand your pressure, the heat, and all these different variables change where you need to fish. You cannot fish the same spot every single time. You got to slowly start to understand the waterways you are fishing.
And that's a question I have for you, Forrest. I'm new to carp fishing, and I know it's your favorite. How do carp feel about current? Do they avoid it? I'm still learning river fishing and how current plays into that.
So it depends on the time of year. So where carp usually live, they prefer a medium amount of current. They don't prefer slack water. Even though we do have them in our ponds and our lakes and everything of the sort, where your carp will get the largest is where there's constantly flowing water and constant food. So up towards our dams, up towards our deeper waters where those locks are flowing over, you're gonna have a very high population of carp. The way I fish for them, it's gonna be a lot difficult with the river structure and how hard the current is. But these fish, if you can present a bait in front of them, are gonna be upwards in the 40-pound range because they have that constant food flowing over. I do fish a couple creeks that have the same kind of spillways with a very, very, very heavy flow. And I sight fish those because those ones that I fish that are creeks are only about 5 feet deep. And in the summer, and I can look at where the fish are, and I'll place my baits, and I'll sit there. And as soon as one sucks it up, I'll set the hook. Because in those very heavy current settings, they will not run with the bait as they usually do in a lower current setting. Because they'll sit there with the bait because they're already fighting the current. They aren't really going to be trying to push away and run off after they eat something. They're going to be sitting there. So that's why I mostly spot fish carp in really heavy current versus when I actually carp fish, I will have my pod out with my alarms and set baits and leave them there and not look at my rods at all.
Okay.
So we were in summer. What are you doing for fall and winter?
Fall is my favorite time to fish. I think it's great because you still have a lot of your summer fish and your stuff that likes the warm water is still hitting. Your cold water fish are just starting to heat up. That's when I start seeing walleye hitting, is usually in the very beginning of the fall.
Usually first snowfall and fall, I usually see them come out really hard.
I saw them earlier this year. I saw them when it was still 50 degrees outside. I was noticing, I actually caught my first walleye completely by accident. I was trying to nail smallmouth bass and a small one cranked a spinnerbait at night. I've since learned the trick for walleye is swim baits on a jig.
Yep.
I don't know why, it's the magic stuff. I met an old guy fishing near the dam and he asked me if I knew how to fish for walleye and I said not very well. And he showed me how he did his rig and I tried it and I caught impressive walleye the entire rest of the night. Mm-hmm. It was real good.
That's the thing I've definitely saw. A lot of swim baits on a Ned rig hook or a swimming hook, and all they do is cast them out, let your bait hit the bottom, pop, pop, drop, pop, pop, drop, pop, pop, because these walleye are all sitting on the bottom by these rocks, and they aren't coming up for food unless they actually have that pressure and they see a bait fish swimming actively in front of them. When you're doing that presentation, it entices them every single time.
Yeah, I feel like you get a lot of your ambush predators by showing a more active bait, especially in the fall. Fall is when I increase the sizes of my cut baits. I'm generally using bigger hooks, bigger baits. I know with catfish, I'm not catching as many catfish, but they're usually bigger. I think in the fall, everything is just trying to fatten up, so it just becomes a free-for-all. If you can present, the trick with fall for me was finding local stuff. I tried baits that worked for me during most of the year, but the things that always did best were stuff out of that body of water. That was cut bluegills, cut suckers, sometimes live baits, shiners.
Drum.
Yeah, I haven't used a drum yet.
Freshwater drum has worked really well for me too.
That is one of our river fish I have yet to catch.
I actually caught my first one this year.
Nice.
It was only about 1.5 pounds. I've never really targeted drum. I know a lot of people do catch them, especially coming out of Chartiers Creek and McKee's Rocks in that area. But as a carp fisherman, never actually had the bait to target them. I went out one day with worms and was just trying to catch a couple channel catfish. And here came this drum along, and it was actually a really good fight with that guy.
Are worms your normal bait for them? I'm not familiar with the species.
For channel cats?
No, for a drum.
I wasn't even looking for the drum. I was looking for a channel cat.
No, I was just curious, what is the traditional bait for drum?
I honestly don't know.
Well,
I see a lot of people catch them on swim baits.
If any of you guys know, feel free to comment. Let us know.
Yeah, absolutely. Comment below. So, what about wintertime? What do you do in wintertime?
Wintertime, first of all, the best advice I can give anyone for fishing in the winter is to stay warm because you're going to be catching fewer fish, so you need to put in the hours. And part of that is being comfortable while you fish. What I'm generally doing in the winter is I'm getting I'll do one rig with cut bait on the bottom, I'll do one rig with shrimp on the bottom, and then the third rod I use, I will be doing something more active. Sometimes it's crankbaits, sometimes it's swim baits, but I want something that's going to trigger a sluggish fish into seeing a wounded prey animal. I've noticed this is when I catch my best smallmouths. I don't catch very many of them, but the ones that I do catch are just absolutely pound for pound some of the most impressive fighters I've caught. Usually during the winter, I'm finding that structure is important, but in different ways. I'm finding out that the fish that avoided the shallows during the summer are going to be feeding in them actively, but it seems to be a more in and out process. They're going to be going out to feed during certain hours, then they're returning to those deep holes. So at that point, your day-night cycle becomes very important. I usually see my best action right before the sun comes up, or about the first hour or two afterward.
Absolutely. So you got any plans for this year? Any sessions? Any places you're going for trips?
I have a lot of stuff planned this year. I'm trying to do a lot. I hope I can do it all. I'm going to be taking a trip to Virginia to fish Lake Gaston, which is one of the best blue catfish fisheries. The current world record of 143 pounds is out of there.
Right off the James River.
Yep. And another thing, I'm going to be presumably going to be trying to enter some local catfish tournaments. I'm still looking into the entry process. It's on the goal list. And also there is a lake called Lake Arthur that's about an hour north of Pittsburgh. I've heard nothing but good things. And those are my big three ambitions. I'd like to do more, but I'm being realistic with myself.
We could add Pymatuming in there. I mean, you can go up one day.
That's true.
Just add them all in. So what's your favorite fishing memory and why does it stand out?
Oh, that's a tough one. I'm gonna just pass by all the ones with my grandfather because those are special for a very different reason. But just for pure fishing, the first time I caught a blue catfish, because I had read how rare they were, and it was sort of it was my rainy day goal. It was something I thought, maybe if I do this for a couple years, I'll catch one. And when I pulled it out and I looked at it, I was like, I think this is a blue. And I look up some pictures on my phone, like, it is a blue. It definitely is. I was like a kid on Christmas. I showed it to everybody at work. The picture I had, it brought back the same enthusiasm that I had for fishing when I was 7 years old and walking up the road to a local bass pond. It was beautiful.
I remember you texting me that day. It was definitely a situation because we've had some 20-pounders caught in the city limits, but blues in general in downtown Pittsburgh are very rare. And just to catch one is a memory that you definitely do here. When I caught my first flathead in downtown Pittsburgh, it was around 22 pounds. When I told you I screamed like a 6-year-old kid opening presents at Christmas, I've never been that excited. Just that enthusiasm, that excitement that brings out in us just from fishing, we want to expand to you guys. So if any of you guys do want to come out to downtown Pittsburgh, and if you guys want to learn how to fish, please message me in the comments. Please let me know. I will take you guys down gladly for free.
And don't be afraid to talk to people. I have learned so many things just by talking to other fishermen. If you walk by someone and they have a line in the water, ask what's biting. Most people are happy to share and talk with you. And I've met some friends that way that now they're a part of my life. They're people I hang out with. Fishing is a great way to expand your community because we don't have to have anything in common. We already have a rod in our hands.
Speaking of that, that's actually my next question. What can we do and what is the city doing for conservation for the fishes and the community that we have in downtown Pittsburgh?
The biggest thing that we need to do, and it was just an instant snap thought, I didn't even have to think about it, is litter. When
Absolutely.
The Three Rivers area, for those of you who aren't super familiar with it, it has multiple stadiums, it has multiple theater venues, it has a lot to do down there.
Concert venues.
Yeah, it's always crowded.
Everything.
And it's great. It brings a lot into the city. The problem is that despite having garbage cans everywhere, every time I'm down there, I'm fishing stuff out of the water. I'm seeing garbage there. I see people just throw stuff on the ground. The best thing we can do for our city is take better care of it.
I agree with that. I think this year I'm going to be putting together a cleanup on downtown Pittsburgh right on the Riverwalk because of the amount of litter that we have. It's not something that we want, but it's something that we have. And it's what we need to do as a community is we need to change that. We need to be a part of it, and we need to go out and we need to start cleaning these things up.
Yeah, it can't be somebody else's problem.
Absolutely. Also, we need to work a little bit better with our boating strategies. I don't know if anyone saw this year, we've had a single boat that has been docked up on the North Shore that has actually floated away about 6 or 7 times and has created damage to the stadium docking pylons. Our boating and our docking restrictions need to become a little bit more strict. And I have nothing against the boaters in downtown Pittsburgh, but a lot of them are aggressive towards fishermen. And we need to somewhat try to figure out a problem for that.
Yeah, well, I mean, we all have to use the water, and that's...
Have you ever fished saltwater?
I have. I have fished saltwater. I have done both deep sea fishing, and I have also done bay fishing and surf fishing. It's not something I've done terribly often. It is something I love to do. I think that surf fishing is probably the most exciting type of fishing there is because
absolutely.
You never know what you'll catch. I had one day where everyone was catching a 7-inch croaker, just little croaker, and I managed to hook into about a 20-inch flounder. I was happy about that. And then some kid pulled up a 9-foot thresher shark. Same 3 feet of water. Same 3 feet of water. The kid's drag just started screaming. He was about 11.
Absolutely.
So he was working with that. He was working on that fish for a while, but just the sheer you never know what you're going to get feeling that saltwater gives is really fun, and I highly recommend everybody give it a try. There are a lot of ways to do it cheaply. You can go out on a party boat for about $75 and you don't need any gear or anything.
Absolutely. They'll take you out, give you all the gear, bait, and everything you need. I remember I fished saltwater for probably about 6 years. Going from Fort Myers to Bonita Beach to Sanibel Beach, going up to North and South Carolina, Murrells Inlet, and fishing for an array of species: sheep's head, Spanish mackerel, black drum, red drum, snook. And then I started getting into shark fishing, and that puts a little bit of confidence in your system. I remember the first time I went out, I was in Murrells Inlet, South Carolina. I was fishing the surf. Just as he said, you never know what you're going to catch. I had 3 rods out with cut mullet, and all of a sudden I see about 100 yards in the distance, shark after shark jumping in the air on these pods of mullet. And I was freaking out because they weren't going out into the ocean. They were coming towards the bank. And all my baits were directly in front of them. In about 10 minutes, all 3 of my rods were bent over. And I was alone. I lost 2 rods that day.
Oh.
But I was still very happy that I caught my first 5-foot shark.
Definitely.
Different experience in freshwater, absolutely. And that's going to come up to my next question. What would you rather do, fresh or saltwater fishing?
Oh, that's tough. That's tough. If I had to pick just one to do all the time, it would probably be saltwater. And only because of that you can catch anything factor. I love freshwater. I will probably never live at the shore again. Yeah. It's just too expensive. But I think I will always find my way towards living near a good lake or river. I don't think I could ever see myself moving away from freshwater.
I'm basically in the same spot as you. I would love to fish saltwater every single day of the year. Go out, go catch the fish that I could eat, make some sashimi, go make some really good fried fish or any broiled fish or anything like that. But at the same time, I've had my love of fishing, which originated in freshwater. And the same species I've been fishing for my whole life, I still fish for, and I'm still not tired of. And if I'm to the point where it brings me this much happiness, to the point where I'm starting to spread it to other people, trying to teach more people how to do it, I feel like I'm going to stay with freshwater also. Saltwater, it's definitely pricey to live near there. Bait's pricey, tackle's pricey. You could definitely, like as you said, do it cheap. What I used to do is I used to go to pawn shops, buy a rod for $10.
Oh, definitely.
And be ready to go as soon as I got down on vacation. And I've had some of the best experiences in my life in saltwater, but at the same time, my whole life is freshwater. So there's no way I'm changing that. Do you have any advice for beginners coming down to fish?
I actually have a lot of advice for beginners because I have been fishing my whole life. I had never been river fishing before last year. So this was a whole new learning experience for me.
Absolutely.
The best things I can tell you, one, talk to people, because the people who fish there every day are going to know what works. They know what doesn't. Sometimes somebody will be nice and share you a spot.
Us.
Yeah, we do. We do.
Yeah.
It's fair. Another thing that I can always recommend is don't be afraid to change up your tactics. I oftentimes would be set on, hey, I wanted to target this species, I wanted to do it in this way, and here was the bait I was using. And I would spend the whole night feeling frustrated. I have since learned if the catfish aren't biting, I'll try for smallmouth. If the smallmouth aren't out there, I'll try for panfish or walleye or whatever. There's always something that's biting.
Absolutely.
And I think as a new fisherman, you want to catch fish. You don't want to just sit there and be bored the whole time. So you want to find ways to be successful, and sometimes part of that is saying, I'm just going to sit around and bang sunfish for 2 hours because they're biting and it's fun.
Yeah, your best thing to do, even if you're as a beginner, is to start with the small fish. Go to your local lake or pond and start catching bluegill and start learning how these fish are eating and then when to set the hook.
Yeah.
And then you go from there. Still fish the same pond, but go for bass. Go for any of the larger species. And going back to something that Matt said earlier today is, do not be afraid to ask fishermen for advice. The best thing you can do, and the best thing I've learned so far in my fishing career, is whenever you can ask a question, ask it. Whenever you can get advice, get it. Because it's going to be some of the things that you're going to hold dear and tight, and actually going to help you catch more fish and help you get around the area a little bit more knowledgeable and understand the way you are actually fishing.
Agreed. And one more tip for beginners, and this was a tough one for me because I came from mostly being a freshwater bass fisherman. So I targeted with a lot of artificials, a lot of lures, spinners, and everything. And when it got really hot this summer, I just couldn't hit anything on artificials. And I learned that sometimes there's no food like food. A lot of times highly pressured fish, they've seen every lure that's out there. They know all these presentations. They're used to being tricked. But there's nothing tricky about just eating another piece of prey. So sometimes when you can't hit anything on artificials, don't be afraid to give the bait a try.
Absolutely. Going back on that too, don't be scared to get into another species. Like he said, bass fishermen. I know there's a lot of you guys out there, and I know you guys hold your sport dear. But in the cold months, or the months that you can't really be fishing for bass with artificials, dabble in a little bit of a catfish, or a little bit of crappie, or a little bit of other sport fish.
You might
Dabble
find
around.
something you love.
Don't continue with only the same fish the whole year. Try to get a little bit of a variety in there. And then I think that's actually going to be it for us today. Thank you guys for watching Fish Talk. Again,
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for coming on.
All right.
I'm Forrest from Steel City Fish, and this was Matt. Thanks for coming on again, and take it easy.
Tight lines.